We're KC 101. Time for another edition of Saturday with Seniors, brought to you by Eisenhower's Tiger County Harley-Davidson. And boy, last week we were talking with Sally Ames, and she just had so much fun information. I said, hey, you want to make this a two-part piece? And she was game. How you been, Sally?
Good.
Good to see you again. And so you grew up, you were saying, in outside of Millerton. What was that?
Right, when I was a kid, until I was 15, and then we moved to Mansfield.
So you moved to Mansfield at 15 years old. We talked a lot about as a kid and your wood stove and coal stove and all how you did laundry. Did you ever go to any concerts? Meet anybody famous in your life?
Yes, I did.
Tell me about that.
When I was started dating my husband, Mr. Ames, we went to Whitneyville, and believe it or not, I met Garth Brooks. He was there.
Yep, 1991, I think that was.
He was just becoming famous.
And you got to meet Garth Brooks.
Yes.
What were your impressions of him? Do you remember? I mean, it must have stuck in your mind.
Yes. I felt he was very down to earth. At that time, he was just becoming famous, and he was very down to earth. I liked his music because I thought it spoke to a lot of personal things in my life.
That was the first major concert they had at the Tiger County Fair.
It was.
They took, and believe it or not, they about broke even on that concert. They didn't make much money.
I know.
And now Garth's over $1 million to book. I think they played about 5,000 probably for him there. I can't find the original contract. I'd love to find it somewhere.
It would be interesting, wouldn't it?
To see his signature on there and what they paid.
But like Joe Diffie was there. We met him.
He was there twice, actually.
Yeah.
20 years later to the date.
Yeah. And there were several others, which I can't remember right at this moment, but we went to them because my husband liked country music. So we went to a lot of these shows.
Any other things you went to as a kid? Do you remember going to parades in like Mansfield or Wellsboro anywhere?
The Wellsboro Laurel Festival. I remember going to that. I wouldn't go now because I would get trampled.
Everybody's pretty kind. I met a lady at the last parade who's been to every single Laurel Festival parade since day one. I was so fascinated with talking with her.
There was not as many people at these parades when they first started. Seemed like a lot, but it wasn't.
Some of the floats were quite extravagant back in the 60s and 70s.
I was just looking through one of my books that you get, the Wellsboro book. And they were talking about the parades. And I remember them, the tractors pulled them, but they had the laurel all over. They could pick the laurel then. And they had them on the floats, and the floats were very beautiful.
They're still beautiful, but it takes so many volunteers, and finding volunteers now seems like everybody made their life busy, and I don't understand. Life should be simpler now. We have machinery to do things, but yet we have less free time.
We do, and I never could understand that, but nobody wants to volunteer to do anything.
Yeah, and I'm trying to change that in this world. All of our employees do a lot of volunteer work at the station. I do a lot of volunteer work, and I want to lead by example, because our fire companies, what are we going to do if we don't have volunteers for that, and so forth and so on. And
there's a lot of places that are very well worth doing things for.
When you were younger, were you in Girl Scouts or anything like that? Or sports?
I was in Girl Scouts 1 month.
That didn't last long.
It didn't last long because my parents couldn't afford to shuffle me. Like kids nowadays, their parents take them to these things. They go and pick them up. My parents couldn't do that because you could not afford it.
So what was your first job, your first paying job? Did you work?
My first paying job was babysitting. Back then, girls babysat.
Yeah.
My brothers worked on farms, and basically then they moved out of the house because they went to live with a farmer to be there all the time. So I kind of missed them.
Yeah, so I didn't grow up as much with them as families do.
Yes. I'm very close to my brother in Troy. My other brother moved to Ohio when he moved out of the house, and he went to college for a short time, and then he moved to Ohio with his wife where she lived. So we got to see him once a year then.
Yep.
But it's not like it is nowadays.
But you couldn't just call them on the phone. It was so expensive, at least to make a phone call. And mailing a letter. Post office was a little more reliable then, but it did take 6 days to go across the country or whatever it took. And then another 6 to get it back to you.
Yes.
So you found out what they respond to your questions you asked them 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
So driver's license. Did you get your driver's license when you were young?
I did not. My parents couldn't afford the insurance. So I got my
What was it, $5 then?
I don't know. It was a little more than my parents could.
I've talked to people whose first car costs less than my last tire I replaced.
Yes. The big thing is I got my license when I was almost 21. And believe it or not, both my children got their license when they were closer to 21. And they both said they felt it was better to get their license at that age than it is to get it at 16, that you had more maturity to handle that driving is a privilege.
Yes. So you took your driver's test.
Twice. We joke about this, your grandkids are getting their driver's license now. And we joke about, and my oldest one took hers and it took her twice. And I said, don't feel bad. Nana did too.
Where was the driver's license center? So if you passed your driver's test, where'd you go?
You went to the courthouse on a certain day. I think it was Wednesdays. You went to the courthouse. The state troopers were there and they took you for your license and you had to do all these things. And it's scary even. I don't care when you get your license. It's a scary thing to have the policeman sitting in there.
It's all or nothing right now.
Yeah. And it's like, if you run over somebody, that's not a very good idea.
You got a bad witness right there. Yeah.
Yes. But I couldn't parallel park.
You still had to parallel park even then, huh?
Yes.
Because there's only like three places in Tyler County you don't even have to. You can park, on the behind Main Street, but there's so few spots.
But the thing was,
they parallel parked with horses and wagons during the day. I can imagine that.
Yeah. Now, when I got my license, it was all
diagonal spots on Main Street.
Diagonal spots on Main Street of Wellsboro. So you didn't have to parallel park. And do you know how many times people I know have said, I'll drive around the block 6 times?
Yeah. They still do that.
Yes.
They still do that.
But that's what I flunked on.
On the parallel parking.
And they still make kids parallel park.
Well, we have self-parking cars now. I think in the next 5 or 10 years, people are going to push a button and they're going to totally lose. It's like driving a standard. You used to probably drive a standard. You know how to shift a car in a clutch?
Yeah, I do.
That's a dying art.
And guess what? Both my kids do.
That's good.
I said they learn to use a standard because you never know when it's going to come back.
My stepkids from my last marriage, we got him a standard because he couldn't text and drive with standard because you have to.
That's right.
Your hands on the shift.
Yes.
And your hands on the steering wheel. And we thought that would take that temptation away.
Did it?
I'd like to think so.
Oh, that's good.
I don't know.
I never thought about that, but that might be a good idea.
Yeah.
I drive a standard and I still text and drive.
Oh boy, you're not past statute of limitations. So do you remember your driver's license photo on the first one?
Oh yeah, it looked a lot better than the one I just got.
I know it wasn't until like the 60s or 70s they started putting photos on driver's licenses in PA. Some of the people I talked to, well, you were a little later in your license. Some people I talked to, they literally had a piece of paper that just had their name on it, like their social security card look. There was no picture, no identification.
Yeah, and just think about it. You get away with driving a lot when you shouldn't be.
Yeah. Did you know people that drove that didn't have a license back then? It was more common because no one...
Me. But it was terrible because I was not a very good driver even.
Oh boy. Okay. Bad combination.
I have been told on several occasions that I'm not the world's best driver. And I said, that's okay. As long as I can get from point A to point B and I haven't run over anybody, I think that's...
You set the bar pretty low, but that works. Right. Yeah. They did a survey. They asked 100 people, do you drive better than average or not? And it should be half drive better than average and half don't.
Yeah.
But 95% of the people said they drive better than average. So everybody thinks they're a good driver in this world, but obviously 95% can't be better than average. And I worry about the 5% that admits they're below average.
My husband always said he drove truck, and so he criticized anybody about driving. And I was one of them that he'd say, but I said, that's okay, honey, when I have to drive you.
Do you have any other childhood memories? Things that are not here anymore? Places you used to like to go? Restaurants? Places?
Well, let's face it, Wellsboro has changed. There was 2 5 and 10 cent stores when I was in school. They're not here any longer. I know people that worked there right until they closed the stores.
Yep. We had Jim Paxton on this program about a year ago and talking about how his dad started that up. And
I remember his dad. Mm-hmm. His dad was still working when I would go to the 5 and 10. Well, you could go to the 5 and 10 and get your children's pictures taken when they were little. I've got a bunch of pictures, and all of them were taking at one of the 5 and 10 cent stores.
Is that where Santa would be at Christmas time?
Yes. And you would get pictures there of Santa Claus with your kids and stuff. But you also could get a couple times a year, they would be in town and they would take your pictures.
Yeah. There was a candy store next to that, too, I was told. A lot of people talk about that and the fudge they had there. But
oh, yes. That.
Well, there was 2 candy stores, I think.
Yes.
There was the Jell-O, or is that a candy store? And then there was another one next to the Five and Dime, Paxton's.
Well, the one I remember is closer to Dunham's. Mm-hmm. And that was Gus and he had a partner, and they ran that store. And that was a place you went when you were in high school. You walk downtown and go in there and get candy.
And the soda fountain was it Bowers?
Bowers
Pharmacy had the whole
Right.
sit-down counter.
Yep, I remember that.
Where Mountain Valley Realty is now is a whole sit-down counter pharmacy, and really neat piece of history that unfortunately isn't there.
Yes, it isn't there anymore. But the girl I ride to church with, she worked there. I know several people that worked there when it was.
We're always looking for guests for Saturday with Seniors. So if you think she can do what you're doing, please let her know. Anyone listening, because I've never heard the story. I've seen old pictures, but I've never actually heard the story. How about bowling? There's a lot of places to go bowling in town.
Yes. Bowling was a big thing. I remember going bowling. I'm not as a young person, middle age, but that's where a lot of people I know, they went there a couple times a week to bowl for different companies or different organizations. Mm-hmm. And if they were good, they were asked to come back to bowl on those teams.
Yeah. And women and men both bowled then?
Yeah.
Because the pool halls were pretty much just men back in the 50s, or am I wrong on that?
I don't know, because I didn't hit the pool halls.
Which would match kind of what I'm seeing here. But yeah, when I read the history back then, that was not a place that a woman would
but
go.
a lot of bowling.
Yeah.
A lot of women bowled back then.
You remember any of the old bowling alleys? There used to be one near the Native Bagel upstairs, and there was one on Pearl Street upstairs too. There were two of them on the second floor.
I don't remember.
That was a private club. I don't remember what it was, but up in the Pearl Street shops.
I remember when the Pearl Street shops were, what the heck, they had a dance there every Saturday night for the teenagers.
What was the music like at the dance? Was it rock and roll?
Rock and roll.
Yeah,
they played for us just like they do nowadays. They play to the kids. Mm-hmm. When you go to a wedding and you have a DJ, you play for the kids. Mm-hmm. Whatever they want, and you better be having it.
Yeah. I was a DJ back in the days of records, but you remember the days of 8-track tapes and probably 78s even.
Yes, I do. And, you get rid of all that stuff because you don't use it anymore, because now everything's on disc, or your phone, Cyrus on your phone, you can.
Yep.
When I figure out how to use it, I will.
Jason will teach you if you want after. It's not that confusing. Actually, I think senior citizens could really benefit from communicating with the internet, with family and friends. It doesn't.
You know what? I will tell you this right now. Here at the shared home, everybody has a cell phone, and they are excellent at it. I'm the only one that has a horrible time. I figured out how to answer it, but I haven't figured out how to call out at it.
Well, there's always someone here to help you.
Right. I've got children that will help you, grandchildren, but it's just the idea. But everyone here has a cell phone, and they all know how to use it, and they do a good job.
Yeah. How about family vacations? Ever go on any of those? Or
you know what? I never had a family vacation until the second marriage.
Yeah.
We went all over. Benedict's are wonderful. We
had Bob Benedict on this program too.
Have you?
Yep.
And we had, the girls, they went on most of these trips with us and stuff, and we had really good time. My first airplane ride was to Las Vegas, and I didn't do that until I was in my 50s.
So before you were in your 50s, like how many states had you been to when you were 40 years old or whatever?
New York State, and I think I went to West Virginia. We drove to West Virginia.
So just 2 bordering states, or as far as you got?
Then after we started, we went to Alaska. We just went to a lot of Benedict's things, because when you think about it,
you don't have to figure it out, and especially someone like you who's never traveled. That's the easy way to let someone take care of that for you, sure.
Yes, but I got a daughter, my oldest daughter. She can figure out the routes and stuff. She never uses
the map thing there.
She's great at it.
Anything else I should ask you?
School in different areas was different.
School. You went to school in the different areas were different?
That's because I went to Mansfield High School, and I went to Wellsboro High School. I went to Millerton, but that was just grade school. That was a growing up process, but all of them were different. Williamson, I went to Williamson. Williamson was almost a brand new school when I started going there, and so wasn't Wellsboro, because I went to the one that they tore all down. And
Rock L. Butler was...
I went there. I did that with my first year that I went to school here was Rock L. Butler, because that was the middle school then. But I have a niece and some nephews that went to Charleston. They were the last group to go to Charleston.
Corky Hinman, who we talked to before,
Yeah.
he had went to school there too as well for the last year and then transferred.
Yeah. When I first came here, it was shortly after that a lot of the schools, Stony Fork closed down, Middlebury closed down.
Yep.
All of them. They
Consolidation is still happening to this
Yes.
day.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the thing is, the kids are so much happier going to school in the smaller outlying schools. Now, my husband talks about the school in Chatham that burned down.
Yep.
We always joked with his best buddy was one of them that burned it down. It was a joke because he had been in the building a half an hour before it happened. But he talked about the smaller schools and going to school in these places.
Personalized, the teacher knew you and your
Yes.
family and your strengths,
Yes.
and yeah.
And he still to this day could name every teacher he had.
Wow, I want to get him on the show.
He passed away.
I'm sorry.
But
I would have loved to have had him on the
Yes.
show. Sounds like a great person.
his best friend would be another one. Clark G would be another one. He knows there's nobody he doesn't know in Wellsboro and the surrounding areas. He worked here. He dug ponds and roads. And my husband and him are both worked for Middlebury Township.
Wow.
But he can name things and tell you.
Well,
things.
you're on our list too there, Clark. Okay. Anything you want to say before we wrap up here? Any closing remarks or any suggestions
Yes.
for people in life?
Well, I will say that right now I am at the shared home because I had a slight stroke and felt I could not stay at home anymore. But it's a wonderful place. If you have to personal care, it's a wonderful place.
It's very compassionate, caring people here.
Oh, they are. They're so compassionate. They're so caring, and they go overboard for us for things we need or things that we
Yeah,
we can't.
sure. It's a beautiful building here too that you're in, this old house.
Yes. And this house has been preserved because believe what? It was Mary Wells' house or her property.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
Didn't you?
No. I try to learn all the history I can, but I learn something new every time I talk with
Yes.
somebody.
Look at the steeple outside. That's
The turret up there, the big tall
yes,
piece, yeah.
that is the original, I think.
Yeah. I know they had to put new siding or shingles on it, and that was quite a challenge
Yes.
getting up there, but they did it.
Yes, they did, because this is like quite a few jigs and jags in it.
Yeah.
But I worked in a nursing home for about 7 years, and I'm not saying that I wasn't compassionate or caring, but it was a lot more. You had to do more for your patients. And you didn't have as much time. And I know we sometimes got a little short with our patients. I've not had anybody ever get short with me here. They might roll their
Yeah.
eyes, but they don't get short with me.
Well, that's great to hear. Appreciate your time. Sally Ames, 78 years old. We're at the Wellsboro Shared Home, a resident here, sharing your life story. And if you missed any of this or any of our past ones, we've interviewed about 50 different people. Go to kc101fm.com and you'll see a tab that says our YouTube channel. You'll see one that says Saturday with Seniors. Either one will get you there. We have some great stuff in there. Thank you so much for your time.
You are more than welcome.
All brought to you by Eisenhower's Tire County Harley-Davidson. If you're looking for a new bike, a used bike, any service for your bike, go see the folks at Eisenhower's